Hi everyone, I hope everyone's been enjoying my lecture series. It's called Taking Control of Language Impairment After Stroke and Brain Injury. My name is Liz Patton. I am the owner and speech language pathologist at Healthy Speech Solutions, specializing in online speech therapy care in North Carolina and Florida. Today's lecture is going to be talking about understanding Broca's aphasia. So many people have difficulty remembering words that they want to say after a stroke or brain injury, difficulty getting the sounds from in the brain, getting the sounds out of the brain. And they don't know that maybe they have aphasia. And that is something that a speech therapist can work on. So I'm going to give a little background on what really is Broca's aphasia. So we'll start. So before we really start digging in on language disorders, I think it's important to understand the motor strip of the brain. And that's what this big, bright, colorful line is that we have in the middle of the brain. This is the part of the primary motor cortex. So if you take a look at the big red circle, the red circle actually represents where you control your hands, your wrist, your legs, your knees, your ankles. So all the different parts of the limbs on your body is what it represents. If you take a look a little bit farther, on the lower part of the motor strip, it actually controls your face muscles, your throat muscles. It actually affects your ability to be able to swallow, move your tongue, your jaw, your lips, chewing. So you could see how the motor strip of the brain, depending on the part that's been affected from brain injury or stroke, how can maybe potentially affect communication. Kind of cool, right? Such a speech therapist. I think this is so fascinating. So let's really dig in deeper. So if this right here is the motor strip of the brain that we said is focusing on facial expression, what's fascinating is that this greenish bluish star right here is called Broca's area. Broca's area is involved in the brain that has to do with producing words, coordinating the sounds in the words to communicate, the ability to remember vocabulary words, and the ability to coordinate breathing and talking. Be able to coordinate if you're having a really long drawn out sentence is to be able to coordinate when do you have to breathe, because eventually you're going to have to breathe. So it's so interesting to see that the ability to communicate, the part of the brain that's affected, it literally is right next to the motor strip part of the brain that's involved with coordination and also muscle strength. Super fascinating. So Broca's aphasia. So what happens after someone has a stroke? What happens if someone has a brain injury? And the impact is on the site where Broca's aphasia is located. It does happen. What can end up happening is that people can have shorter sentences with Broca's aphasia because this part of the brain right here has been affected, which, as you remember, is right next to the motor strip. You can have shorter sentences. It tends to be less than 4 words. Not always, but typically. It can be a very slow, labored speech, like how are you, or how you going, having grammar issues when you're trying to talk. It's very common to miss maybe verbs or prepositions in speech. A lot of times remembering noun words can be easier than verbs and prepositions. I need speech therapy. So for example, someone who has Broca's aphasia could say walk dog. What they're really trying to say is, I will take the dog for a walk. And they missed the and they missed the will and the I, and all they focused on was walk dog. Instead of making a longer sentence, I will take a dog for a walk. Another common example for having difficulties with grammar and remembering words could be saying book to table. That's what someone could be saying. What they really could be meaning to say is there are 2 books on the table. So you could see how you could say some of the words, but you might miss some of the other words in the sentence. And speaking is also typically very stressful and understandable because you're not producing the longer sentences. You know what you want to say, but you can't get the sound or the word out. And it can be very disabling not being able to communicate what your wants and needs are. Other areas that can be affected from Broca's aphasia. It can actually be difficult to understand longer sentences. And knowing that has to be more complicated information. Like if I'm having a conversation, I'm saying, how are you today? What did you do at work? You're going to understand me, no issues there. It's more of when you have complex grammatical sentences such as, Mary gave John balloons. Okay, yeah, clearly you're going to know that who gave the balloons to John was actually Mary. But now we're going to make it into a more complicated sentence, and it turns into, the balloons were given to John by Mary. The balloons were given to John by Mary. And it's like, okay, who got the balloons? Was it John or was it Mary? And who gave it to the other person? Because there's so much surrounding words around it that it can actually make it very difficult to try to figure out that the balloons that were given to John was actually by Mary. It can be a little bit more complicated. A lot of times with Broca's aphasia, reading tends to stay intact, which is exciting. Got to have something language-based, right? But they will often have difficulty writing. But it makes sense because if the left side of your brain has been affected, then typically the right side of your body will have weakness, could have spasticity, contraction, could have flaccidity, could be very weak. And if it's very weak, and if it's contracted, it's going to make it very difficult to try to write from a motor planning standpoint. So that makes perfect sense. So an example of Broca's aphasia would be, I want an apple. So clearly, I want an apple is what this person's trying to say. That's what I'm thinking. I want to say, I want an apple. What am I actually going to say? I want an, what is that word? Is that a balloon? No. Is it a fire truck? That's right. No. Is it a banana? Is it an apple? So it's, you know what the word is. It's on the tip of your tongue and you just can't get it out. And it affects your ability to communicate your sentences, affects your ability to be able to write it down, affects your ability to be able to coordinate breathing because you're so focused on what is that word that you just can't remember what it is. Sometimes you start groping for sounds. It could be I want, instead of just saying I want an apple, you could say I want an and you're groping because you're trying to get the sound to come out when you're trying to communicate, because the part of the brain that had been affected is right next to the motor strip. Another way to think of Broca's aphasia is, what's that word? Okay, not it. Okay, I'm gonna get this. My husband's in front of me and I want him to know what I want to say. Oh, yes, I just found the right word. We're okay, I just found the right word. I can communicate now. But you had to sort through all these other wrong words to be able to hopefully eventually be able to find the words. So I hope that the two cartoons can kind of help reiterate what is Broca's aphasia. So I wanted to say thank you to everyone for watching my lecture. I'm hoping that everyone got a little nice insight on what Broca's aphasia is. Broca's aphasia is an area that not too many people know about. A lot of people do have communication difficulties. I hope everyone keeps an eye out for my next lecture. It's going to be focusing on the cool stuff. It's going to be focusing on actual speech therapy strategies that we can use to help you find the words when you don't know what the word is that you want to say. So have a wonderful rest of your day. And again, thank you for watching my video.